Hopelessness. Last Sunday, when I was coming back from central London, I was approached by a young man when I was leaving the station, and he asked me, "How do you think we can solve knife crime?" I responded simply, "We just need to reenact and reinstate the death penalty." He was a bit surprised and taken aback, and he asked me, "Do you actually think this is going to solve things?" To which I asked him, "Do you think it's better for innocent people to die, or better for the police to actually do their job and protect the neighborhood?" To which he replied, "Fair point." I forgot to tell him this at the time, but I actually know someone who was killed 9 years ago at Old Kent Road. And if the police had acted as they were meant to at that time, those people would have been dealt with justly. He then said and asked me if I could give him a £600 donation, because he told me that he was running a charity that provided workshops that would help people in gangs no longer do such things, by teaching them sales and marketing and various other skills that would help them out. I told him simply that it wasn't personal, but I wouldn't pay, because the problem is not in these workshops. The problem is the fact that the economy is so bad. People simply cannot get a job, and even if they get a job, they cannot even survive with it. That's why I tried to explain to him that 25 years ago, even entry-level jobs were sought after by very few people, and so they would literally require illegal immigrants to do them. But these days, just to get into Lidl, it's an 800 to 1 ratio, right? And I tried to explain to him that even though what he was doing was noble, this would not actually solve the issue. I mean, look at Rio de Janeiro, for example, right? There's loads of violence in that part of the world. Why? Well, because they cannot make a living. They're forced to resort to violence. They have to shoot people, sell drugs, and do other things that most of them frankly would not want to do. But because they are not given an opportunity to thrive, and they cannot just go to school and get a degree, subsequently obtaining a high-paying job, and to get themselves out of this situation, this just is simply no longer the case. As a matter of fact, this is why so many people smoke, vape, drink, and do various other things that are known as vices, because they're trying to sedate themselves from this awful situation. This is their coping mechanism, right? And sorry, there's an ambulance to our right. And this is a coping mechanism, right, to alleviate them from their garbage life, quite frankly. And once again, this stems from the fact that they feel hopeless, right? They feel as though they cannot progress in the world. They have no options. And because of this, violence, and specifically gang violence and other violences, will increase rapidly. In the example of coping mechanisms, if you go to Eastern Europe, everybody smokes. Why? Well, if you haven't been there, it's basically a rundown ghetto. It's so miserable, and frankly speaking, you have no prospects. The only thing you should do from the second you are born is to try and get into a language school so that you can learn, for example, German or English, and to immigrate there. Because back home, frankly speaking, you will not get a job, and you will not escape the poverty all around you. If you feel hopeless, you need to analyze why. You need to set out a plan of action and work towards it, because only then will that alleviate your hopelessness. In fact, most people feel hopeless, but instead of tackling the problem head on, they try and sedate it, as I mentioned, through alcohol, drugs, vaping, smoking, etc. And ultimately, this will not help you in your life. So, as hard as this is, don't indulge in your vices. This will simply cause you to spiral out of control. And you know that feeling after you've done something really bad and you hate yourself, right? And you wish you could rewind time, but you can't. Well, that's the feeling you feel every single time. But if you make a plan of action and you go towards your destination, you'll no longer feel so hopeless. In fact, you'll feel hopeful. And you may even feel excited as to where you're trying to go. You need to know where you're going to and how you're going to get there. I mean, think of it like this. If you go to the airport and you go to the person at the desk there and you say, get me a ticket, what's the first question they'll ask you? Well, where do you want to go to? So that's one way you can alleviate your hopelessness. In fact, I want to just quickly go back to our prior example of vices. There are two ways you can deal with your vices. The first way is to subdue it, right? You can do your drugs, this, that, and the other, and you'll feel worse. But ultimately you wake up the next day and you'll feel even worse. And then you go into this never-ending spiral where things just get worse and worse and worse. However, you may be the second type of person that actually gets motivated after doing something bad. You feel regret and you feel as though you want to improve yourself, you want to compensate for that. In the first example, what you're doing is instant gratification, right? You've heard this over 1,000,000 times. So you're sacrificing yourself, you're sacrificing your future self for yourself now. So you're indulging in these pleasurable habits that will not help you in the long term, but they feel good now. But in the long term, it will make you feel even worse and make you feel even more hopeless. However, if you go by the second example and you plan out your time, you'll be engaging in delayed gratification. This will make you better, improving yourself, and it will make you feel more hopeful and excited, as I already mentioned. So this is how you should tackle hopelessness.